Good evening, everyone. Tonight, we're standing on a sun-baked roof where shingles exhale last light, where the aluminum ladder ticks like a nervous metronome and a plastic bucket wobbles near the edge as if it's thinking about flying. So before you get too comfortable, take a moment to like this video and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do here. And in the comments, tell me where you're listening from and what time it is. I like seeing our little constellation of night owls. Now, turn off the lights. Maybe let a fan hum in the background. And let's begin tonight's journey together. My name is Glenda. And that evening, the roof felt closer to the sun than to sense. Pine needles formed little brown rivers along the gutter. The air had that late afternoon glaze that makes good decisions drowsy. I climbed because my son, Darren, had been working doubles, and Lyra, my daughter-in-law, had announced, thin as a paper cut. A handyman is extravagant, I said. I'll manage. The way mothers do when pride signs for a package their knees didn't order. Halfway through the second gutter run, the day went wide around the edges, like someone erased the sky with a wet sponge. My heartbeat miscounted. I sat. Then I didn't. And the shingles hurried up to meet me when I came back. The first face I saw was Lyra's, phone held high like a flag auditioning for weather. Oh my God, she fainted, she narrated, but her voice had the brightness of someone testing ring light modes. Then the shock, a bucket of ice water across my chest. The cold like 1,000 pins being ambitious. I gasped, coughed, felt the world tilt again, and clawed for the ladder. Light joke one, if I'd been a puddle, at least the sun would have apologized. As a person, I got the back camera. Darren's head popped through the attic window. Worry 3 sizes too small for the moment. Lyra, stop, he started, but she was already busy with angles. I rolled to the ladder, knees arguing in Morse code, and found rungs with my toes the way you find letters in the dark. A, B, C, down, down, down. On the patio, I sat and let my hands shake out rain they hadn't earned. Lyra set the bucket down like a prop that had nailed its scene. You can't lie around up there, she said. It's the neighbor's view. Elder wisdom, when someone uses humiliation as first aid. Don't argue the tone. Count your breath. Check your bones. Confirm your paperwork. Your dignity is the only bandage that doesn't stick to the wound. Inside, I took a warm shower, the water undoing the metal in my muscles. I wrapped in a towel, brewed tea, and wrote what mattered on a note card. Pulse steady. Dizziness passing. Chest clear. Darren knocked, holding a blanket like a confession. Say the word, and I'll do the roof tomorrow, he murmured. Say the word, and you'll call a roofer, I said. And he nodded like a man who knew a new verb cost less than regret. Lyra hovered in the hallway, eyebrows in tidy parentheses around a diagnosis I hadn't requested. We've been researching care homes, she said, crisp as a brochure. Cold baths are standard after a faint. Nurses do it. They also have training and common sense, I answered evenly. I'm not a tile that needs mopping. She blinked, recalibrated, and left a cloud of citrus that felt like a PR strategy. I dried my hands and opened the cedar box Richard, my late husband, told me to keep for when the room lies more than the furniture. Inside, a USB drive, a thumb-sized key, and a sealed letter addressed in his square engineer's hand. If they call you old, I read the first lines and felt a small keel under my feet. Glennie, Richard had written, do not make speeches to people who like their echoes. Call our counsel. Rowan Pike, say foghorn. He will answer deck light. If he doesn't, hang up and eat something. Academic phrase of the day. Learned helplessness. The public argument that, after repeated failures or punishments, People stop trying even when the door is unlocked. The antidote is small proof you can touch. A working key. A balance in your own name. An appointment you set. I called the number I only used at holidays. Foghorn, I said. Deck light. The receptionist replied smoothly. A beat later. Rowan himself came on, voice like a cardiologist's metronome. I summarized the roof, the ice, the nursing home talk, the tone. He didn't rush. You are not signing anything today, he said. You are not debating thresholds on a porch. Bring the USB and the small key to my office at 11 tomorrow. I'll invite Darren and Lyra with the phrase, estate update. We'll let paper and a camera decide who tells the truth. Light joke too. I wrote, do not marry the latter, at the top of my to-do list. Because humor sometimes persuades knees better than lecturing does. Night thinned to a quiet ribbon. I ate toast salted to the corners because attention makes ordinary food remember it's a friend. I laid out what morning would need. The letter. The key. A blue pen that doesn't leak. My small bottle of pills. On a sticky note for myself, I wrote, daytime only, chain on, water ready, 10-minute limit, everything in writing. The next day. Rowan's office smelled like new paper and a lemon tree that believed in boundaries. The conference room's clock kept time without showing off. Darren arrived first, hands jammed in pockets, apology hiding somewhere behind his eyes. Lyra followed, her perfume entering 3 steps ahead. Sunglasses filing their own paperwork. So, an update, she said. As if she were the host and we were the segment. Rowan placed a small recorder on the table and pressed the button like blessing a candle. We're here to authenticate a sealed directive from your late husband, he said, and to determine whether certain conditions have been triggered. He nodded at me. I plugged in the USB. Richard appeared on the monitor in a navy sweater that had outlived trends. The corners of his mouth amused in that quiet way that used to soften hard days. Glennie, if you're watching this, someone in our family chose speed over kindness, he said. So, I left you a mistreatment trigger. If you are coerced into leaving your home, denied basic respect, or subjected to neglect disguised as efficiency. This directive returns control of the house and designated accounts to you. No allowances, no optics, paper. He smiled a little. If the offender is our son, forgive him in autumn. Let the lawyers handle summer. Rowan advanced slides that translated love into clauses. He outlined the trust's structure. The house ring-fenced. A healthcare fund with my signature as the only gate. And a scholarship account named for my mother, untouchable, on schedule, boring on purpose. We have corroboration from today's events, he said, and from recent messages about placements. The trigger is live. Lyra tried to pivot. It was first aid, she said brightly. Rowan didn't blink. Ice water on a newly conscious person atop a roof is not first aid, he said. It is content. The court will understand the difference. Darren stared at his hands. I didn't tell her no, he said. The room let that sentence be the only one he owned. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Aluminum ladders expand in heat more than you think, enough to stick a lock or shift a foot. Roofers will knock them twice before climbing. Not for luck, but to wake the metal. I prefer waking decency with invoices. Rowan slid a short checklist toward me. Change the locks at 8 a.m., deputy present. Freeze discretionary transfers at noon. No packing help without a list and a witness. Porch is for water and 10-minute conversations. All offers in writing to me. He gave Lyra the same copy. There will be no secret placements, he added. Health directives require Glenda's consent. Scholarships continue on schedule. Light joke 3. The lemon tree by the window dropped a single leaf right when Rowan said, discretionary, as if even the foliage objected to nonsense. We ended without grandstanding. Darren nodded once, a tired yes. Lyra tried to float the word allowance. Rowan caught it, folded it into the envelope marked "Counsel Only," and smiled the kind of professional smile that means gravity has arrived. Outside, the air felt 10 degrees kinder. On the walk home, sprinklers stitched the morning with that soft hose smell you can only get in a neighborhood that still believes in grass. I passed a hardware store and bought nothing, not even a ladder tip cover, because having a plan is sometimes the only tool you need to carry. Back in my kitchen, I taped a card inside the cupboard where my hands already go. Porch rules, daylight only, chain stays, water poured. 10 minutes per visit. Everything in writing. No signatures after 4 p.m. Sleep before yes. I set the USB and the tiny key in a dish shaped like an anchor, Richard's private joke, and let the house learn the shape of our new safety. The kettle clicked off like a period. Tomorrow. The locksmith would arrive in a quiet work sweatshirt, and the door would learn a gentler word. Click. Morning arrived like a clean ledger line. No drama. Just space for the next true thing. The locksmith showed up at 7:58 wearing a sweatshirt that said "Quiet Work" in block letters and carrying a canvas bag that sounded like honesty when it moved. Rowan's paralegal, Mara, came with a clipboard and the sort of calm that makes clocks behave. We did introductions on the porch where the air smelled like hose water and pine. I kept the door chain on because the chain and I are now colleagues. 2 cylinders and the back deadbolt, the locksmith said. Deputy will witness at 9. Thank you, I answered, and the thank you felt like a stone placed in the right part of a river. We worked in the steady rhythm of people who prefer nouns. Mara read the judge's temporary protective order into her recorder. The locksmith swapped the first cylinder and tilted his head, listening to the new key sing. Light joke one. When the latch clicked, he whispered, "Not a soprano, but pitch perfect," and the chain seemed to nod. I brewed tea and set out 2 glasses of water because hospitality is a muscle, not a loophole. At 8:41, Darren's car coasted up the curb and stopped like a dog that remembers the fence. He waited in the driveway, hands open, eyes on the porch. He didn't try the door, that counted. Lyra arrived at 8:53, perfume 5 steps ahead, sunglasses performing. She rattled the handle once, just once, then put on a smile that had practiced in front of a ring light. "We're here to help you pack," she announced to the general vicinity. "You're here to wait for the deputy," I said gently. "Then you will read the list with your eyes instead of your mouth." Elder wisdom. When chaos shows up overdressed, do not match its outfit. Keep your shoes flat, your voice low, and your paper visible. Dignity is a thermostat. At 9 on the dot, the deputy stepped onto the porch, ink pad and patience aligned. "We're enforcing the order," Mara said, and handed him the page where dates live. He listened, read, nodded. I passed him a glass of water through the gap because that's a tradition I'd like to keep. The locksmith turned the back deadbolt. The deputy witnessed. The porch learned the sound of safety. We entered. Not with drama, but like people who intend to leave a room better than they found it. Rowan called as the second cylinder settled into place. "Filings accepted. Bank freeze clock start now," he said. Discretionary transfers halted under the mistreatment trigger. Merchants will receive notice by noon. Do not, under any circumstances, debate this on the porch. "My porch is a debate-free zone," I replied. "Chairs, yes. Cross-examination, no." Quirky fact. Sidebar. Yale locks are named for Linus Yale, Jr., who improved the ancient Egyptian pin tumbler mechanism in the 1860s. The small magic is that different length pins rise to align at a shear line when they do. The cylinder turns. It's humbler than drama but harder to fool. I like a machine that rewards alignment over volume. Inside. I made one slow lap through the rooms with Mara, calling out what would stay. The quilt. The recipe box. The framed photo that refuses to be flattering and therefore is true. The cane-bottomed chair my hips know by heart. Outside. Lyra took a phone call on speaker and said the word optics twice. Darren stared at the maple tree like it owed him an explanation for shade. At 10. The locksmith handed me the little envelope of labeled keys and a receipt that made my breath drop its shoulders. Front, brass head, back, steel head, deadbolt, black ring, he said. Do not duplicate for anyone who calls themselves urgent. We're friends, I told the chain, and the chain kept quiet in gratitude. Mara set a 2-hour window for supervised retrieval of Lyra's labeled clothing and personal items. No heirlooms. No found electronics. No things with names or stories older than 2 years. I'll text when the deputy is ready to walk you in, she told Lyra. You may bring boxes and nothing that plugs in. Lyra gave me a smile made of glass. We're offering a generous allowance to keep this from getting public, she said. Public has a calendar now, I answered. Send proposals in writing to Rowan. The porch does not accept stipends. Academic phrase of the day. The sunk cost fallacy. The public argument that once we've invested time or money. We irrationally keep investing to justify the original decision. The antidote is a deadline that says, enough, and a receipt you file under lesson by noon. The freeze notices began doing their quiet work. The boutique emailed to retract 2 final sale gowns purchased on the trust card. The luxury car dealer asked where to send their apology. A PR firm pivoted from brand support to, we will close out our file. Light joke 2, the smart fridge pinged to say, party mode available. And I told it we were celebrating with paperwork. It seemed relieved. At 1. The deputy returned, and the retrieval began. We made a narrow path from the guest room to the door, like a hallway built inside a hallway. Lyra tried to detour through the study. The deputy's eyebrows acted their rank. Stay in your lane, he said. And it turned out lanes can be verbs. Darren carried a box that said, shoes in marker bold as regret, on the porch. He set it down and looked at me like a man waiting to be assigned a smaller sentence. I should have told her no, he said. Start now, I answered. No is a word with a future. He nodded, and for a breath, the wind decided to behave. When their window ended, the deputy closed his notebook and the door exhaled as it latched. I stood in the quiet and wrote the porch minutes while my hands could still hear the details. Time in, time out, items taken, sentences said, which ones mattered. I texted Rowan the summary. He replied with exactly 2 words, well handled. I fed the house next. Soup reheated is not a metaphor, it's lunch. I salted it to the corners and ate at the small table beneath the banker's lamp, the shade casting green down where the work is, softening everything else. The world kept breathing. A neighbor walked by with a dog wearing a sweater that appeared to be knit from cable bills. The dog looked like it had made peace with budgets. Light joke 3, my thermostat, which has become a character. Flash new schedule learned as if it had passed the bar exam. I pinned an invisible ribbon on it and moved on. Rowan called with the afternoon brief. Health plan directives confirmed. No one can place you without your signature, he said. Utility accounts moved to your name and locked. The scholarship fund distribution stayed ring-fenced and on calendar. He paused. And Glenda. Richard's video was generous and exact. You're allowed to have a feeling later. I collect them, I said. I label them and keep them where they won't trip me. I walked the yard before the light changed. Leaves clicked against each other like low applause. The ladder leaned where we'd left it, contrite. I took it down, carried it to the shed, and hung the rope in a neat coil the way Richard taught me when neatness was how we made space to argue less. I taped a fresh note inside the cupboard where my hands already go. Porch rules, daylight, chain on, water poured, 10-minute limit. All offers in writing, no signatures after 4 p.m., sleep before yes. Phone buzzed. A text from Darren. Can I come Wednesday to clear the gutters? With an actual harness and the name of the roofer you like? I typed, yes, bring the invoice. Bring your spine. No streaming. Then I turned the phone face down. Not as a performance, but because gravity is my new social media. In the quiet that followed, I opened my little notebook and wrote a smaller list of things to restore by sequence. 1. Locks, done. 2. Utilities, done. 3. Pantry, soup and cinnamon, done. 4. Garden, winter pruning, scheduled. 5. Work, literacy room, Thursday. 6. Peace, kept, daily, not borrowed. Then, because I promised Richard I would live, not just enforce, I added 7. Music. Play the record with the saxophone that always forgives you. And 8. Freesia if the florist has any, because mercy can be scented. By dusk, the house knew my tread again. I watered the plant that keeps the window company. I put the anchor-shaped paperclip on the letter from the college about the spring scholarship names. I stacked the USB and the tiny key in the dish where my fingers say hello to certainty. I turned the banker's lamp off and listened to the click like a well-placed period. The door chain settled into its little groove. The locks did not brag. That's the point. And before sleep, I stood on the porch, mug warming my palms, and rehearsed the sentence I'll allow tomorrow if anyone asks how I am. I'm proceeding by schedule. It's not poetry, but it is a spell. Morning settled like a soft towel over a clean counter, quiet, absorbent, ready. I brewed tea, slid the tiny key and USB back into their dish, and set today's plan where my hands already go. Call list. Document scans, soup at noon, porch at most 10 minutes per visitor. The house made its small clicks, thermostat clearing its throat, the banker's lamp doing its single, polite tisk, and the quiet felt like a room I could rent by the hour to my courage. At 9. Rowan called with the kind of voice that teaches blood pressure manners. Filings were stamped at 8:12, he said. Temporary orders are live. The judge assigned Friday for a short hearing. We'll keep it boring on purpose. Boring is my new favorite luxury. He moved through the day's choreography, forensic review of 90 days spending, freeze confirmations rolling out like weather maps, in a quick note that the healthcare directive had been uploaded to the state registry, no placement without my pen, period. Elder wisdom. A boundary doesn't have to shout if it's in writing and on a calendar. Before 10. The first merchant tried to make rain out of confetti. The boutique that loves adjectives sent a curt email. Final sale, no exceptions. Rowan replied with a paragraph that behaved like a good hinge. Quiet, aligned, unavoidable, and final turned into fully refunded with the speed of a cashier who found their training. A PR firm attempted dignity with brand safety strategy. Rowan attached the order and the word terminated. Light joke 1. My smart fridge pinged, party mode available, right then. I told it our party theme was logistics. And it dimmed its little icon like it understood. I scanned receipts and labeled folders the way a choir labels harmony, sustenance, utilities, health, garden. I dated a sticky for the porch rules, daylight, chain, water, 10 minutes, writing, no signatures after 4 p.m., sleep before yes. Then I breathed through it like scales. The doorbell tested its manners around 11. I checked the peephole. Darren, alone, with a canvas tool bag that had seen real work. I kept the chain on. The chain and I prefer to be introduced first. I can rehang the downspout and leave, he said, not performing, just offering nouns. Yes, I answered. Invoice comes with you, not after you. He nodded. That small, sober yes I grew up wishing adult men used more often, and set to the quiet metal language of screws and brackets. Lyra's car idled across the street, sunglasses facing forward, camera holstered but itching. She texted once, "We can offer a private stipend if you keep this calm." I replied with a weather report, court Friday, offers to counsel, porch is not a cashier. Light joke 2. She added a lemon emoji for reasons unknown. I reminded myself lemons belong in tea, not threats. At noon, soup and silence. I salted to the corners, ate at the small table beneath the banker's lamp, and let the green shade pool calm exactly where my spoon needed it. Then I walked through the house on feet that practiced gratitude without speeches. Quilt where knees remember. Recipe box under a palm that keeps promises. Framed photo still unflattering and therefore true. I opened the garden door and read the yard like mild scripture. The maple shadow spelled a patient noon. The ladder. Properly rehung in the shed. Looked sorry without groveling. I penciled a small spring list on an index card. Prune, late winter. Compost in March. Freesia if the florist's luck holds, and a gate latch that says click like a period, not an exclamation point. Academic phrase of the day. Procedural justice. The public argument that people accept outcomes more peacefully when steps are fair. Consistent and explained. In my house, it's the porch card. In my bank file, it's the stamped order. In court, it will be 6 minutes of verbs and a pen that knows where to land. Rowan's paralegal, Mara. Arrived at 1 with a portable scanner and a smile that knew the names of things. We sat under the lamp's gentle green and sent the day's paper to the cloud. Refund confirmations, account freezes, the utility change letters with their quiet, right-angled fonts. The dealership's unwinding, she said, tapping her tablet. Apology in transit. Jewelers are negotiating with gravity. I laughed once. That low kind that never needs the room to join. Tell gravity it has counsel, I said. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Those green banker's lamps are white on the inside so the light falls down and doesn't glare back at you. A design choice that tells the eye. And the heart. Focus where the work is. Soften the rest. Mine makes even bills look like something a human could survive. At 2. The deputy texted, supervised pickup window at 3, 2 boxes. Labeled clothing only, no detours. I filled a pitcher. Set 2 porch chairs the way you set expectations. And taped a copy of the list beside the bell. They arrived on time. Lyra with hunger and gloss. Darren with shoulders that remembered humility. The deputy stood where arguments usually start and did nothing, which ended most of them. We made a path. Guest room, hall, door. Lyra glanced toward the study, a reflex more than a plan, and the deputy's eyebrows practiced law. Your lane, he said, and even the air understood. Light joke 3. A neighbor's terrier walked past in a sweater knit like a cable bill. He gave Lyra a look that said, "We've all made purchases we regret," and continued to his next appointment. When they left, I poured water in the empty glasses because hydration is a ritual and rituals teach muscles to stand down. I wrote the porch minutes, time in, time out, items removed, sentences that mattered, and sent the summary to Rowan. His answer came swift. Good, keep nouns. Friday we make this permanent. The town turned its volume down a notch by late afternoon. A community board post that had been busy with optics and concern now held 2 calm replies. Please show the order. Please state names and dates. Silence did the rest. Priscilla Hart, the socialite who considers brunch a verb, texted a screenshot of her retraction letter with a line. Tiny but true. I confused gossip with concern. I regret the distance between them. I filed it under weather with a private star for effort. I walked to the literacy room before dusk. Fluorescent lights hummed in the key of patience. Maritza practiced receipt until her tongue stopped tripping on the C and P. She grinned wide enough to fit Tuesday. Joel asked if boundary and banister were cousins. We decided both keep you from falling as long as you hold them. I left smelling faintly of dry erase and new sentences. On the way home, the florist had a small bucket labeled freesia, 3 stems left. Scent like a clean promise. I bought them, set them by the banister portrait, and told the paint to behave. The lamp approved with its little tisk. The evening brief, dealership reversed. Boutique refunded, PR firm folded. Jeweler muttering but moving. Rowan sent the hearing script. If addressed, you'll say. I relied on counsel and on the documents my husband prepared. If asked about family dynamics, I prefer to keep the record about paper. If asked whether you understand the scope, yes, Your Honor, no embroidery. I read it aloud until it sat in my mouth without splinters. Darren texted at 8. Roofers can do Friday 2 p.m., harnesses, insurance, estimate first. I typed back, approved, no filming. Bring the estimate for my folder. Thank you. A small scene bubble appeared, then nothing. Good. Some gratitude works best when it doesn't try to be a sonnet. Before bed, I wrote a card for the cupboard. Friday. Plan. Court. Sweater with pockets. Low shoes. No speeches. Lunch. Soup. Salt to corners. Porch. Closed until after hearing. After. Tea. Plant the freesia where the light can remember. I turned off the lamp and listened to the click. The chain settled. The locks didn't brag. The house kept my breath like a steady instrument, tuned to an evening key that doesn't demand applause. And in that long. Forgiving quiet before sleep. I pictured the judge's pen underlining verbs. The deputy's eyebrows enforcing lanes. The porch chair holding their 10-minute limit. The scholarship letters traveling toward names printed on thick paper. And the freesia arguing gently with January. Tomorrow would ask for nouns. I had them laid out like clothes when I finally closed my eyes. The room did what it had promised all day. It held. Friday arrived with the soft weight of a wool coat, meant for weather, not for spectacle. I set the house to hold steady. That's what the thermostat thinks it's doing when it behaves. Tucked Richard's blue letter into the simple binder and put on the sweater with the trustworthy pockets. Rowan texted, 10 minutes early, which is his way of promising boredom. And Mara replied with a calendar emoji that looked suspiciously like a lullaby. I ate soup. Salted to the corners because routine makes courage easier to lift. And placed a peppermint in my pocket the way some people carry charms. The courthouse smelled like paper that got good at waiting. Judge Whitman ran a tidy calendar. You could feel the benches paying attention. Rowan's tabs were a landscape of indoor voices. Green for orders, blue for exhibits, red for if necessary, which he hopes never is. Lyra sat 2 rows back, sunglasses perched like opinions, perfume trying to testify. Darren chose a seat near the aisle and the exit, hands folded as if they were learning a new prayer that involved verbs. The clerk called our case, and we stood without drama. Rowan began, mistreatment trigger, executed on a date certain, enumerated conditions, corroborating events, relief requested, continuation of freeze, reversion of discretionary control, supervised retrieval schedule, health directive enforcement, and non-disparagement related to charitable funds. He spoke like a person filing silverware. each piece in the right drawer. He placed the USB transcript, the porch minutes, and the refund confirmations on the rail, then let the quiet do some of the work. Keen, hired late, nerves still ironing their shirt, tried to soften the floor. Your Honor, my clients regret any appearance of unkindness. They contend actions were misunderstood. Cold water was not first aid for a newly conscious adult on a roof, Judge Whitman said, without looking up. Proceed. Elder wisdom. You don't have to raise your voice when the room has a system. You just put your paper where the system can see it and let gravity keep doing its job. Rowan called exactly one witness, Mara, who verified the sequence. Roof, ice, nursing home talk, porch rules, lock changes, merchant reversals, health directive filing, no embroidery. The directive's criteria are met, she concluded, and the clause, drafted by the decedent, assigns control to Mrs. Harrow when such treatment occurs. Judge Whitman reviewed the signature pages, underlined something only he could see, and looked up. Mrs. Harrow, he said, anything you wish to add? I kept Rowan's script close. I relied on counsel and on the documents my husband prepared, I said. I prefer to keep the record about paper. He nodded. Good. He turned to Keen. Counsel. Keen tried one last pivot. We request a cooling-off period to attempt family reconciliation. The judge's mouth made a shape that belonged to autumn. You may reconcile any day, he said. The orders protect the facts while you do. Academic phrase of the day. Burden of proof. The public argument that the party asking a court to change or enforce a condition must show enough evidence to carry the request. In practice, it means receipts beat adjectives. Orders granted. Freeze continued. Reversion permanent. Supervised retrieval affirmed. Health directive enforced. Non-disparagement about the scholarship fund added. Clean and sharp. The pen made its quiet music, and the clerk stamped the margins like a metronome. Light joke 1. The stapler balked at a thick packet and then, as if embarrassed, perfectly stapled the next 3 in a row. The clerk patted it the way you forgive a good dog. Outside, the winter light brightened by exactly 1 inch. Lyra stepped toward me as if she'd rehearsed it. This can be handled privately, she said. Teeth like clever punctuation. We can create a narrative. We already did, I answered. It's titled Order Entered. Send any offers to Rowan. She tried the word optics one last time. I offered her the word calendar instead. Darren stood a respectful distance away, then said quietly, I'll be at the house at 2 with the roofers. Harnesses. Estimate first. Approved, I said. No filming. Bring the invoice. Back home. I hung my sweater on the chair that understands coats and boiled water, because ceremony can be as simple as a kettle. I put the permanent order under the lamp screen and read the verbs out loud like tasting soup, continues, reverts, enjoins, enforces. The thermostat flashed, holding steady, proud of its specialty. Light joke 2, the smart fridge offered celebration confetti on its tiny screen. I told it today's party favors were copies and receipts, and it dimmed itself with what I swear was relief. Mara arrived with a flatbed scanner and the unstressed competence of someone who alphabetizes before coffee. We digitized the order, filed it where hands already go, and labeled a folder, Court, Final, which felt like putting a book back on a shelf in the right library. Rowan called with the merchant coda. Dealership unwound, boutique refunded, PR contract terminated, jeweler capitulating as we speak. I imagined gravity adjusting its tie. Quirky fact, sidebar, that green banker's lamp, the classic one, has a base heavy enough to sit still when life wobbles, and the shade is white inside, so the light falls down where the work is. There's a quiet theology in that. Keep the glow on what you can touch. Let the edges soften. At 2, The roofing crew unfolded ladders with the tenderness of people who understand heights. Harnesses clipped, boots gripped, they moved like nouns. Darren arrived with coffee for the crew and no camera for himself. "Estimate," he said, handing me a paper that knew how to behave. "Deposit?" "Approved," I said. "And thank you for using numbers instead of apologies." He nodded, then asked if he could lubricate the side gate latch. "It's complaining." I handed him the oil and watched him move like a person relieved to have small. Fixable verbs. Lyra idled along the curb in a car the color of an argument. She didn't come up. She posted a story instead. Someone else's patio, someone else's cup. The caption, "Choosing peace." Which is what people write when they've recently met a judge with a pen. I placed my phone face down because serenity doesn't need a witness. By 3. The gutters flowed, the estimate was signed, and the crew left the yard cleaner than they found it. I wrote the ledger line. Labor paid, materials scheduled. Next inspection, Tuesday. Darren hovered at the porch edge like a man asking a room for permission to be kinder. "I'm learning invoices," he said. Also, I told her no. "Good," I answered. "Let the word get sturdy." He looked at the freesia by the portrait and smiled the way people smile when a scent tells them they're in the right house. Light joke 3. The thermostat chirped, new schedule learned, again. I told it could audit my character later, and it fell silent like a tiny, reformed critic. Late afternoon brought the community with its better face. The college emailed the spring scholarship list with a note from the director. "Your name on the program, as requested, only for reading, not for speeches." I wrote a margin line. "Read slowly. Breathe between names as if planting bulbs." Priscilla Hart forwarded her newspaper retraction. "I confused gossip with concern. I regret the distance." And added a small donation receipt to the emergency fund. I printed both and stapled them under weather. Good. I walked the perimeter of the garden while the sky practiced dusk. Fence rails lined up like a sentence that knows where the commas go. I penciled on an index card. Prune late winter. Mulch before March. Train the new cane away from the center so air can pass. Boundaries that let things breathe. That's the whole trick. Plant or person. Rowan's day-end call was a lullaby in legalese. Final orders docketed, enforcement letters sent, non-disparagement clause acknowledged, health directive locked. If an officer shows up with a placement suggestion, they'll be reading last year's script. "And tomorrow?" I asked. "Tomorrow is the boring part that keeps dreams alive," he said. "Pay bills, write names, make soup. Teach adults the difference between banister and boundary. I'll see you Monday to sign 2 more verbs." I set the kettle again because sometimes the point of tea is the steam leaving on schedule. I wrote a card for the cupboard. Weekend rules. Doors. Lock. Then breathe. Porch. Chairs open. Chain friendly. 10-minute limit. Money. Receipts or rest. Heart. Mercy after nouns behave. Garden. Fence first. Bloom later. I ironed pillowcases because smooth linen can convince a brain to put its fists down. I placed the peppermint from my pocket in the dish with the tiny key and the USB. A bright dot among anchors. In the literacy room tomorrow. Maritza will read receipt without hesitating. Joel will test quiet against a noisy day, and I will sit with the green lamp's memory of work that stays tidy. Names to write, envelopes to stamp, verbs to keep, before sleep. I stood at the door and listened to the latch say click. Accurate. Modest. Not auditioning. The chain settled with its small metal exhale. The house held my breath like an instrument tuned to a key I can hum without thinking. Outside. Winter tried on its softer coat. Inside. Nothing grand happened. Which is exactly the life I hoped Richard's letter was purchasing. A life arranged by schedules. Receipts. A judge who underlines? A son who brings oil instead of speeches? And a future that keeps its voice down. I turned off the lamp and let the room close like a good book. Saturday moved like a page that had already decided to be kind. I set the kettle, slid the permanent order into a clear sleeve in the simple binder, and wrote the day's verbs where my hands already go. Stamp envelopes, porch window, 1-2 p.m., supervised closet pickup, soup at noon, breathe between names. The house answered with small, good noises. The banker's lamp did its single polite tisk. The latch said its accurate click, and the thermostat announced, holding steady like a tiny bailiff sworn in for the morning. The deputy arrived 2 minutes early, which is my favorite apology. Same rules, he said. And the porch chairs nodded as if they'd been briefed. Lyra came exactly on time. Sunglasses like punctuation, a garment cart behind her that believed in drama. Darren followed with fewer words and better posture. We reviewed the list, clothing only, 2 boxes, no electronics, no heirlooms, no detours, and walked the hallway we had taped in blue painter's tape like a miniature runway for good behavior. Elder wisdom. The most loving thing you can do for a bad situation is give it a hallway and a clock. Boundaries are kindnesses for people who have forgotten how to stop. Inside the guest room. Lyra's hands moved fast, but her eyes kept drifting toward the study door. The deputy's eyebrows cleared their throat. Your lane, he said. She pivoted back to hangers. Darren carried a box labeled shoes, with the care of someone who knows the weight is not just rubber and leather. Light joke 1. The garment cart's wheel squeaked in a key that sounded like a small violin begging for Rawson. Darren added a drop of oil and it thanked him with silence. They finished within the window, which is a kind of decency, at the threshold. Lyra exhaled an argument that never quite found its nouns. We could meet in the middle, she said, gesture-airy. We already did, I answered. It's called court. She rolled her shoulders as if trying on a different outcome. Darren met my eyes, and the apology there was brief enough to live. Thank you for the lane, he said. Thank you for not narrating, I replied. They left. The deputy signed the minute sheet. The house exhaled. I ate soup, salted to the corners, bread that minded crumbs, and stamped the last of the spring scholarship envelopes. Each name got its own breath. The green lamp poured its soft light only where the work was. Edges of the room agreed to blur. I tucked 2 extra notes into the stack. 1 for a student with a part-time night shift, 2 pages on loud days, 3 on quiet. 1 for a student who wrote about caring for a parent. Your diligence counts twice. One's for them, one's for you. Academic phrase of the day. Fresh start effect. The public argument that temporal landmarks, new week, new month, ceremony days, can boost follow-through on goals. The trick is to attach the boost to a system, not a mood. Calendars over vows, clauses over slogans, timers over pep talks. In the early afternoon, I walked the garden perimeter. The gutter crew had left their work neat. The rails of the back fence held a tidy line like a sentence that finally knew where its commas belonged. I penciled a card. Prune late winter above outward buds. Mulch first sunny Saturday. Freesia near the steps so perfume can greet shoes. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Freesia's scent is strongest in the evening because its pollinators wake then. The plant is doing a tiny marketing plan every night. I respect a flower with a strategy. On my way back inside, the neighbor's terrier in his cable bill sweater paused at our gate, performed an inspection sniff, then gave me a look that translated to, "Your latch sounds fiscally responsible." Light joke 2. I saluted him like the comptroller of small dogs, and he approved my budget. Rowan's mid-afternoon call was a paragraph after good news. Jeweler capitulated, full refund posted, he said. Keene has filed his final stipulation. Translation, they're done arguing with gravity. Monday, we'll sign 2 verbs and close the procedural loop. He cleared his throat more kindly than most people clear their throats. How's the porch? Chairs are learning brevity, I said. The chain and I remain colleagues. The literacy room smelled like dry erase and quiet valor. Maritza read receipt without stumbling and patted the word on the page like a dog that had learned sit. Joel wrote banister and boundary side by side, then arranged a tiny arrow between them. Family, he said, satisfied. We laughed the kind of laugh that respects effort. I told them about a judge who underlines verbs and a banker's lamp that believes in downward light. They told me about shifts and suns and how some apologies arrive without adjectives. We gave out gold stars like procedural justice for adult courage. Back home at dusk, the porch had kept its hour and earned its rest. I brewed tea and stood in the doorway with the cup warming my hands, the chain resting in its groove like a well-trained comma. A message from Priscilla pinged, a photo of her check to the college's emergency fund, captioned, "For the students who were busy when I was loud." I filed it under weather, good, and allowed myself a smile that didn't need a witness. Light joke 3, the smart fridge. Perhaps sensing a safer climate. Offered celebration confetti again. I told it the party was very small and invitation only, and it settled for showing me the correct temperature. At 7, Darren texted a photo of the roof receipt, estimate stamped paid deposit, with a short line, "Next visit Tuesday, harnesses, 2 p.m. I replied, "Approved. Thank you. No filming." He sent a thumbs up, which is the correct length for gratitude when you're trying to be useful. I took out Richard's letter, the one with the blue edges, and touched the R where his pen had pressed. "We are doing it in the boring way," I told him. "Your favorite." The lamp made its little tisk of agreement. The room kept its good hush. Elder wisdom. Second serving, don't confuse quiet with surrender. Quiet is what competence sounds like when it's at work. I wrote tomorrow's card for the cupboard. Sunday plan. Porch closed. Sabbath for boundaries. Letters to students, mail, pantry, beans to soak. Label Wednesday. Garden, walk once, decide nothing. People, answer only nouns. Mercy, between 2 and 4 if weather approves, and if apologies are 1 sentence long. Then I ironed pillowcases because smooth cotton convinces a brain to put its fists down. I set the brass birds atop the outgoing mail so stamps wouldn't go wandering. I watered the plant that holds the window company, then checked the latch again just to hear the small, decent click. The thermostat announced night set, like it had passed another tiny bar exam. I praised it without making it weird. Before sleep, I pictured the courtroom again, the bench that prefers paper, the pen that knows where to land, the stapler trying its best. I pictured the literacy room, the gold star on Maritza's page, the arrow Joel drew between banister and boundary. I pictured the garden posts lining up their future, and the freesia plotting its evening marketing campaign. I pictured a son arriving on Tuesday with a thermos and no speeches, a deputy with a clipboard and eyebrows that enforce lanes, and a woman on her porch who can say, when anyone asks how she's managing, by schedule. And then I did the last kind thing I knew how to do. I turned off the lamp, listened to the click, and let the house hold me the way a well-made sentence holds meaning, without wobble, without bragging, with punctuation that fits in the dark. Sunday practiced being gentle. I mailed the scholarship letters in a small ceremony at the blue box on Maple, names squared in envelopes. Stamps pressed like careful thumbs on a balloon you don't want to pop back home. I let the porch rest, Sabbath for boundaries, and put beans to soak. A note on the container that read, Wednesday in neat, unambitious ink. The house kept its good hush. The banker's lamp withheld its tisk until invited. The latch said its accurate click whenever I needed to remember that accuracy can be a kindness. After lunch, I walked the garden once and decided nothing. Just the perimeter and the promise. The fence rails drew a line the way a sentence decides its comma. I stood by the gate and practiced the single sound it knows. Click, under my breath. A metronome for the part of me that loves procedure. Inside. I wrote 3 postcards to students from the scholarship list, a sentence of encouragement, a question about the book they loved most this year, and a single star drawn in the corner because stickers don't have to be adhesive to count. The phone stayed face down like a well-trained pet. Messages would stack if they wanted to be dramatic. Monday could audit them. I made tea and read Richard's blue-edged letter again, not because the law needed repeating, but because grief sometimes likes to touch the frame of the picture to remember the person. Elder wisdom. Resilience is mostly rehearsal. Practice the small good thing until it is muscle. Not mood, stamp, file, sleep. Say no without a speech. At dusk, I walked to the literacy room because quiet keeps company better in groups. Maritza brought me a cookie wrapped in waxed paper and said, "Receipt," in a voice that finally trusted the P. Joel traced banister and boundary with his finger and said, "They rhyme if you're tired." I laughed and told him tired rhymes with most lessons that stick. We read for 20 minutes and then sat without reading for 5. Because learning also needs a chair where silence can put its elbows. Monday arrived with a good posture. I returned home from a grocery run to find an envelope wedged under the mat, a courier's brisk rectangle with Keen's handwriting, not his firm's. Inside, a letter that said, "I regret confusing loyalty with convenience. I read the margin notes as sentiment when they were instructions." I filed it under weather, good, with a soft pencil star he'll never see. Light joke 1. The smart fridge sensed the envelope and offered party mode. I promised it a small celebration if it could keep lettuce crisp for more than 2 days. It considered this a contract and behaved. At 10, Rowan called. "Final stipulations filed," he said. "All returns posted. The health directive has trickled through every system that might pretend not to know. 2 verbs to sign this afternoon. Enjoin and confirm. Then we move to the part where boredom saves lives." He paused. "Any porch activity?" "Closed Sunday," I said. "On purpose." "Very religious of you," he replied. "Keep the Sabbath for boundaries." Quirky fact. Sidebar. The little blue postal collection boxes are engineered with anti-phishing baffles to stop thieves from hooking mail with sticky tape and string. The slot shape looks like design fluff. But it's a quiet defense. I like the idea that even mailboxes have boundaries and their own small eyebrows. At noon, I put the beans on a low simmer to make Wednesday keep its promise. I labeled 2 containers later because hope behaves better when you give it Tupperware. The thermostat flashed, holding steady, like a junior attorney who'd finally passed his certification. I gave it an invisible ribbon. Light joke 2. The banker's lamp clicked twice as if clearing its throat for a speech. I told it we were a no-speech household until paperwork was done, and it settled into its green. Just after 1. The doorbell pressed its palm to the house. I checked the peephole. Not Darren, not Lyra. A woman I recognized from the periphery of holiday photos. Lyra's mother. Tailored coat, polite lips that had rehearsed 3 outcomes. I kept the chain on because the chain and I like a dress code. "Glenda," she said, tone fitting for a foyer with a piano. "Can we talk as mothers?" "As people," I corrected. 10 minutes. Water poured. I handed her a glass through the gap and watched the math of her face adjust to the rule. She began with phrases that had good shoes. Misunderstandings. Optics. The community we both love. Then the hook wrapped in ribbon. A private arrangement would save everyone from further attention. We can ensure a monthly stipend, no strings, no admissions. Discretion is elegant. Academic phrase of the day, I said, gently. Moral licensing. The public argument that doing one thing perceived as good permits a person to do something harmful without feeling bad. A stipend is not a conscience. Paper is. She smiled like a person complimenting the weather at a funeral. You don't have to be unkind, she said. I'm being specific, I answered, and specificity is merciful. She tried the soft menace next. People will talk. They already do, I said. And my porch does not run communications for the rumor mill. I passed her a card through the gap. Porch rules printed neat. And beneath it, a single line. All offers to counsel. We keep this private if we can, she said, too smoothly. We keep this factual, I said, and set my kitchen timer to a visible 10 minutes so she could watch the boundary in real time. At minute 7, she asked for grace. Grace is a dessert, I told her. Dinner is receipts. Light joke 3, the timer, a dignified goose, honked at minute 10. She startled. I apologized to the air on its behalf. She left a business card and a perfume intended to make a room second guess itself. The chain slid back into its groove with a small sigh. And I wrote the porch minutes while the syllables were still warm. Who, what, the offer, the answer, the honk. I scanned the page to Rowan. He replied with 2 words he saves for sentences that behave. Well documented. At 2. I signed enjoin and confirm with a pen that keeps its ink to itself. Mara slid the copies into the folder where my hands already go. We stood by the banker's lamp and let the green shade crown the day without applause. You've got a working system, she said, approvingly. Paper, porch, pantry. And people, I added, when they arrive with nouns. She smiled. Nouns are making a comeback. Darren texted mid-afternoon. Roofers confirmed Tuesday, 2 p.m. Estimate unchanged, will be in and out. P.S. Do you prefer rosemary or thyme by the back steps? I typed, rosemary, stubborn and useful. Also, bring the ladder you borrowed in 2014. He replied with the correct length. Will do. As dusk softened into something you can rest your eyes on. The Community Foundation emailed with the kind of subject line that lowers blood pressure. Scholarship ceremony, name card attached. They'd printed mine not as speaker, but as reader of names, exactly as requested. I opened the attachment and practiced pronouncing each syllable as if it had paid rent. A name is a small country. You don't enter without asking how to say it. Academic phrase of the day. Stamped clearly. Restorative practice. The public argument that communities heal by naming harms. Repairing them where possible. And then building forward with repeated, transparent behavior. It's not a shortcut around consequence. It's a road with mile markers and no shortcuts. On my porch, it looks like apologies in one sentence, followed by verbs on a calendar in my kitchen. It looks like beans labeled Wednesday. In court, it looks like orders that underline themselves. Night came in with well-behaved elbows. I watered the plant that keeps the window from being lonely and placed the rosemary note on the back step so a tomorrow hand, his or mine, would find it. I set the returned ladder against the shed in my mind and let the picture cash the check my patience wrote. I checked the latch, click, and the chain, slide, and the lamp, tisk, and decided I owned enough small sounds to sleep. Before bed, I wrote a new card for the cupboard. Monday aftercare, return calls with nouns, decline stipends, accept receipts, teach, literacy at 6, gold stars ready. Garden, rosemary, then freesia, then fence. Heart, mercy after lists, not before. Then I tucked Richard's letter under the simple binder's first tab, where I could touch it without making a ceremony out of remembering. The thermostat announced night set in its tiny courtroom tone. The house agreed to hold my breath steady, and in the dark that wants to be trusted. I let the sounds I'd collected, click, slide, tisk, honk, the soft hush of beans being patient, be enough music to send me off. Tuesday held itself together like good twine. No phrase, no showing off. I set the rosemary note on the back step, added a little arrow for the exact spot where shoes pause, and put beans on a low burble so the house could smell like patience even while ladders argued with the sky. The banker's lamp kept its green halo tight to the desk. The latch practiced its modest click. The thermostat announced, holding steady as if it had found religion. I checked the porch card, daylight, chain, water. 10 minutes, and decided we were ready for whatever nouns arrived. Darren texted at 1:45, here with roofers, harnesses, estimate unchanged, ladder from 2014 returned with apologies. I opened the door to the chain's limit and passed 2 glasses of water through the gap, one to him, one to the foreman who wore competence like a belt. Harness buckles chimed. Boots stepped where verbs belong. No one narrated anything. Elder wisdom. When repair is in the air, let the tools talk. People can save their adjectives for later. They moved in a small orchestra of sensible noises. Scrape, tap, tighten, the foreman calling measurements in a baritone that felt like scaffolding for my lungs. Darren set the old ladder against the shed with something I recognized from childhood. The respectful quiet you use to put a toy back on a shelf after it broke your sister's lamp. Rosemary or thyme? He asked again, holding both starts as if this were a vote that mattered. Rosemary, I said. Stubborn and useful. He smiled, a private yes, and tucked it near the steps where shoes could learn to be fragrant by accident. Light joke 1. The neighbor's terrier performed his daily audit, sweater knit like a cable bill, and inspected the rosemary with a seriousness usually reserved for tax season. He then issued a single approving snort and trotted off like a small accountant on rounds. At 2:30, the foreman showed me a photo of the cracked flashing, circled like a guilty moon. Common, he said. Boring to fix, which is our favorite. He handed me the updated estimate, the line item polite, the total exactly what math promised. I initialed the margin with a pen that knows its lane. Darren held the trash bag for shingles like it was a diploma he needed to earn by not talking. Progress made its quiet point. Inside. I stamped 2 more scholarship envelopes I'd set aside for address confirmations. The banker's lamp. White inside and green outside. That kindly technology that makes light fall only where the work is, kept the edges of the world soft. Academic phrase of the day. Attentional control. The public argument that we can steer our focus with cues and structure so the brain doesn't chase every loud thing in practice. It means green shades, written rules, timers, and making soup before you get ambitious. Rowan called mid-hammer. 2 verbs completed yesterday show up on the docket as of this morning. Enjoined confirmed, he said. Keene sent a letter I would classify as newly literate about boundaries, also. The scholarship coordinator thanked you for the postcards. They said 1 student taped yours to a fridge that behaves better than most fridges. Light joke 2, mine, overhearing, flashed, party mode available. I told it to celebrate by keeping lettuce alive until Thursday, and it dimmed like a chastened confetti cannon. By 3, clouds gathered but did not commit. The crew buttoned the roof, brushed the gutters, and swept the driveway so it looked like a sentence with correct commas. Darren brought me the final invoice, typed, dated, quiet, and an extra filter for the kitchen tap because it seemed tired. Thank you, I said. Rest is contagious. He didn't reach for a speech. He reached for the squeaky side gate latch and oiled it with the good stuff. 2 drops. No commentary. The hinge exhaled into adulthood. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Rosemary's Latin name, rosmarinus, means dew of the sea. It holds scent in tiny oil glands on the underside of each needle. A warm evening can lift that oil like a small weather event. which is why your hands smell like summer after brushing past. The plant has no interest in symbolism, it's just very good at remembering the sun. At 4. The porch took a breath because Lyra's mother reappeared, coat shaped like a conclusion. Chain on, water poured, timer visible. She tried a new route. Concern as arithmetic. There are ways to make this look less punitive, she said, folding her voice into origami. We can craft a statement that preserves everyone standing. My statement is stamped, I answered, and tapped the order in its clear sleeve on the hall table. Standing is earned by verbs. She looked past me, past the lamp, past the sensible table, toward the idea that rooms should be pliable. You've become very... She couldn't find an insult that sounded like a compliment. Specific, I offered. That's the word. The goose timer honked at minute 10. She startled again. I apologized to the concept of decorum and wrote the porch minutes while the syllables were still warm. Rowan's reply came back in 2. Noted, archived. By 5, the roof was done, the beans were patient, the rosemary settled, and the day felt like it wanted tea. I walked to the literacy room for the evening session. Fluorescent lights hummed in the key of civil service. The room smelled like dry erase, library paste memories, and bravery. Maritza, glowing with a victory that belonged in a small frame, said, "Receipt feels easy now." She read it once without flinching, and then again, just because she could. Joel wrote banister and boundary with a decorated arrow, then added ladder next to them. "All the things you hold," he said, "until you don't fall." We clapped gently because adults deserve stickers without sticky backs. On the way home, the florist had exactly 3 freesias again, petals like white whispers. I bought them and set them by the banister portrait, which has learned humility under the banker's moon. Light joke 3. The thermostat flashed new schedule learned, as if it were attending night school. I told it there would be a quiz on kindness, and it went respectfully blank. Dinner was beans with a squeeze of lemon, bread that minded its crumbs, and half a pear that tasted like planning. I wrote a card for the cupboard, Tuesday aftercare, file invoice, pay roof, thank the hinge, water rosemary, no phone after 8, read 2 pages on loud nights, 3 on quiet, then slid it behind the porch rules, because repetition is how competence grows muscle. Darren texted at 8 on the dot. Final invoice attached. Crew thanks you for coffee. Rosemary looks heroic. I typed, approved, paid. Good work today. Bring ladder receipts if you buy straps. He wrote back, will do, no adjectives. I liked how his sentences were learning to wear boots. At 9, a final envelope slid under the door, Priscilla's retraction printed in the town paper, a donation receipt to the emergency fund, and a handwritten line, bridge closed for repairs, walking the long way around. I put it in weather, good, and underlined the date. An underlined date is a tiny ceremony that doesn't need flowers. Before bed. I walked the fence line once, hand trailing the top rail the way you trace a sentence you finally memorized. The gate's latch said its accurate syllable, click, and I answered under my breath because some echoes are worth chasing. The rosemary lifted a little wave of scent, the kind that forgives the day for being practical. The house received me like a well-made chair receives a back at the end of an honest afternoon. Inside, I turned off the lamp and listened to the single, calm tisk. The chain slid into its groove with its metallic exhale. The thermostat announced night set, as if passing another bar exam. I set the beans aside for tomorrow's better self and placed the roof receipt beneath a brass bird so the paper wouldn't wander. Then I set my own breath to the tiny metronome of the latch still living in my ear when the dark arrived. It did not posture. It simply held. I lay down and let the small choir of good noises, click, slide, tisk, simmer, Sing me past thinking. Tomorrow would bring mulch decisions and name cards to practice, and maybe a porch visitor who could speak in one clear sentence without cameras. If not, the chairs can wait. The rules are not tired, and the rosemary remembers the sun for me on days I forget. Wednesday wore the kind of calm that doesn't need to be announced. The house breathed evenly, latch clicking its accurate syllable. Banker's lamp holding its green circle where work happens. Beans murmuring their low. Obliging song. I set the roof receipt in the simple binder under a tab that used to feel aspirational and now feels domestic. The rosemary by the back step threw a small ribbon of scent into the morning, as if approving the day's minutes. I started with names. The college had sent pronunciation notes, careful phonetics typed by someone who understands that mispronouncing a person can feel like tripping them in public. I practiced slowly, like planting bulbs in soil I intend to see again. Amaya, not Amaya. Nguyen with the front of the mouth, not the back. Jorge with a soft J, not the hamburger J. Elder wisdom. Measure twice. Cut once is for wood, for people. It's pronounced twice. Speak once. You don't have to be perfect to be respectful, but you do have to try in the direction of the truth. A community board post tried to revive the rumor machine with the phrase, "Family dynamics, wearing a lab coat." 2 replies arrived before I could sip my tea. Please show the order. Please provide dates and names. The thread ran out of oxygen. Light joke 1. My smart fridge flashed party mode available, as if gossip were confetti. I told it we were at a conference for boring adults, and it dimmed like a chastened mascot. At 10, Rowan called with an update brisk as folded paper. "Everything that needed to be docketed has been," he said. "Enforcement letters landed. Your health directive propagated through the netherworld of forms." Keene added a sentence to the record. "I misread instructions as sentiment, which is lawyer for I'm late, but I'm here now. Any porch activity?" "Closed until 2, I said. "I'm letting the chain take a lunch break." He chuckled and then softened his voice. "The ceremony is Friday. Read slowly. The room will breathe with you." I carried the stack of envelopes to the blue mailbox on Maple. The slot inhaled them like a reliable animal. Quirky fact. Sidebar. That slot shape isn't just aesthetics. It's a tiny puzzle that foils fishing. The old trick of taping something sticky to a string and going treasure hunting in public property. Boundaries, even in metal, matter. I patted the box's cool flank the way you pat a faithful appliance and walked home through air that smelled like hose water and new asphalt. At noon, I ate the Wednesday beans I'd promised myself 2 days ago. Lemon squeezed late, so flavor stands up, and opened the porch for its hour. A neighbor stopped by to report the terrier's audit. Rosemary passed with commendations. The gate click remains on beat. Light joke 2. The dog wore a new sweater patterned like a spreadsheet. I saluted the CFO of Small Dogs, and he accepted with a modest nod. At 1:30, an email slid into my inbox with a subject line that had too many adjectives. Restorative Roundtable, a conversation on aging with grace. The sender was a PR firm with a taste for soft menace. They invited me to share my journey on camera next to Lyra, whose brand arc was apparently in need of a handrail. I replied with a weather report, court orders attached, porch rules attached, no filming repeated in case the font had been shy. Academic phrase of the day, reputational cascade. The public argument that perceptions spread fast through a network when people copy others' beliefs instead of checking facts. The cure isn't louder facts. It's systems that don't move when shouted at. Orders. Logs, receipts, clocks. At 2, Darren arrived with a thermos and a coil of new ladder straps. He stayed on the porch side of the chain without being told. Set the thermos on the table and asked, 2 minutes to install the straps in the shed? 2 minutes, I said, and handed him a visible timer like a librarian issuing a pencil. He completed the job in 1 minute 40 and returned the timer as if that were the point. Roofers are booked for the follow-up look next Tuesday, he added, and the gutter mesh is arriving Friday morning, trackable, not hypothetical. Approved, I said. Bring the invoice for my folder. He nodded and then, surprising himself, asked, Do you want time by the rosemary? No, I said. Let one thing dominate the corner. The rest can find other places to be useful. He smiled because sometimes landscaping is a metaphor you can live with. Rowan's paralegal, Mara, stopped by at 3 with a small stack of signatures, pretending to be dull. We filed them under court, final, and watched the paper slide home like a drawer that finally learned its rails. You good for the ceremony? She asked. I'll read names like planting bulbs, I said. She grinned. That line belongs on a postcard. The afternoon made itself comfortable. I walked the fence, trailed a hand along the top rail, and told the rosemary that Friday would require shoes I trust. The plant answered the way good herbs answer, by remembering the sun on my behalf back inside. The banker's lamp offered downlight that made even my handwriting look hopeful. I wrote a new card for the cupboard, ceremony kit, names printed large, phonetically, sweater with pockets, peppermint, tissues, shoes that don't argue. Do not accept microphones labeled panel. A knock at 4:30. I checked the peephole. Not Darren, not Lyra, not her mother, a young woman in a blazer. Priscilla's assistant, I realized. From one of those brunch invitations that used to arrive like pollen. Chain on. Water poured. Miss Hart sends this letter, she said, and asked me to say she's walking the long way round. The letter inside was surprisingly small, a printed retraction clipped from the paper, and a handwritten line. I mistook proximity for knowledge. I will sit in the back and clap on time. I filed it in weather, good, and texted back a lemon bar recipe annotated, cut smaller than pride. I practiced the names again at dusk. Mouth careful, shoulders dropped. I let each syllable be a step on level ground. Then I did 3 small things that carry me further than one grand one. I ironed pillowcases until the cotton felt like easy decisions. Watered the plant that keeps the window from being lonely. And laid out tomorrow's card. Thursday, literacy room at 6, reread the health directive. Call the florist about freesia for after the ceremony. If budget allows, soup, salt to corners. Porch open noon to 1. Light joke 3, the thermostat flashed, new schedule learned, as if I were the student. I told it there would be a pop quiz on holding steady, and it went demurely blank. After dark, the town remembered how to whisper. I picked up Richard's blue edge letter and read only the first line. If this is summer, let the lawyers work. Forgive in autumn. And set it back under the binder's first tab because I don't want to wear it out by overholding it. Forgiveness has a season. Paperwork has a schedule. Dignity has a tone of voice you can practice in a mirror until it shows up unprompted. Before bed, I wrote a small list titled After Friday. Because hope is easier to carry when it has a to-do list. Plan time somewhere else. Buy a second brass bird so Mail knows it has supervision. Take a short train to the sea and come back the same day. Ask the florist's name and use it. Send a note to the scholarship director asking how to pronounce any additions. I taped it behind the porch card. Because the porch teaches me to place future kindness where my hands already go. The house collected my breath the way a well-made sentence collects meaning, without wobble, without bragging. The latch practiced its single word, the chain settled into its groove. The lamp gave its gentle tisk. I lay down with beans thinking they're slow. Kind thoughts in the kitchen and rosemary holding its corner like a quiet guard. Tomorrow would bring vowels to coach, invoices to file, and a small rehearsal of walking on and off a stage without making the moment about anything other than names. That is a kind of power I trust. Not the kind that points at itself, but the kind that points at the person in front of it and says, clearly, you belong. Thursday unfolded like a neatly folded napkin, meant to be useful, not admired. I woke to Rosemary insisting on memory at the back steps and the latch saying its accurate syllable like it enjoyed its job. The banker's lamp kept its small green moon where work happens. The beans in the fridge waited under their label. Wednesday. As if patience could be Tupperwared. I set out the ceremony kit card, names printed big with phonetics. Sweater with pockets, peppermint, tissues, shoes that don't argue, and added one more line in tidy ink. Read like planting bulbs. I practiced each scholar's name again, letting syllables sit in my mouth until they stopped wobbling. The soft J. The front of mouth eng. The long vowels that don't like to be rushed. Elder wisdom. If you can get someone's name right, you can get the next 10 minutes right. The first kindness is pronunciation. I penciled stress marks where my nerves might forget, then made tea and salted toast to the corners because attention tastes like courage. At 10. Rowan called with his hospital calm. Docket quiet, non-disparagement clause acknowledged. The PR firm attempting a restorative roundtable has been introduced to the concept of no, written on firm letterhead. He paused. We'll sit back row tomorrow until your part. I'll hand you the program like it's a small boat. Boredom will keep you afloat. I like boats that don't brag, I said. Good, he replied. I've reserved you one. A thread on the community board tried to rehearse rumors under concern, but it deflated under 2 steady replies. Please show the order. Please share names and dates. Light joke 1. My smart fridge flashed party mode available, as if it wanted to moderate. I told it the only party we're hosting is a spelling bee, and it dimmed like a mascot who understands recess is over. I walked to the florist to ask if Frisia could be had on a budget for after great effort. She smiled with the accuracy of someone who stood behind glass all her life. 3 stems, she said. On the house if you promise to smell them while sitting down. I promised. Quirky fact. Sidebar. Freesia releases more scent in the evening, not to be romantic, but to match its pollinators' hours. It's just scheduling. The plant has no feelings. It has a calendar. I bought a small sprig of rosemary ribbon for my pocket. 2. Not for meaning. Just because it makes my hands remember sun. At noon. The porch opened for its hour. A neighbor stopped to report that the terrier, in a new sweater patterned like a spreadsheet, had audited the gate click and found it compliant. Light joke 2. I gave the dog a bow like he was CFO of small dogs. And he accepted with the appropriate humility. Then a delivery van pulled up. 2 boxes of gutter mesh. Trackable, not hypothetical. Exactly as Darren had promised. I signed, slid the receipt under a brass bird, and felt the house's shoulders drop in relief. Systems love when promises arrive in cardboard. The literacy room held its evening hum, fluorescent lights, dry erase, and grown-up bravery. Maritza read receipt without tripping and patted the word like a dog that had learned sit. Joel drew banister, boundary, and ladder with arrows between them like country roads. I like the ladder most, he said. You can get down. We agreed that down is underrated, academic phrase of the day. Attentional control. The public argument that what we notice can be trained with cues and structure. In practice, it's timers, cards, lamps that aim light down, and soup that insists on being simple. I told them my ceremony plan, names first. Deep breath between each like a comma you can hear. We practiced quiet applause, which is clapping that behaves. Back home. Twilight arranged itself neatly in the window. An email arrived from Lyra with a subject line that tried to be velvet and accomplished plastic. Opportunity for healing content. Her pitch offered a 2-camera conversation after the ceremony. Soft lighting, neutral palette, Editorial control optional. I replied with the 6 words that have saved me from a dozen storms. Court orders attached, porch rules attached. She wrote back a lemon emoji. Light joke 3. I added a salt emoji. Because everything she sends tastes under-seasoned. At 6. Darren texted a photo of the ladder straps installed, captioned. Not cinematic, I answered. Good sentences don't need a trailer? He replied with a single check mark. It felt like grammar learning to walk upright. After dinner, beans with a reluctant pear and bread that minded crumbs, I laid my clothes over the chair that understands coats. Sweater with pockets, shoes that don't argue, peppermint in the left pocket, a small pack of tissues in the right, ceremony card in the simple binder under a tab labeled Events, which used to hold dentist appointments and now held a softer kind of appointment. Show up, say names, keep your voice low and your spine honest. The house kept its choir of small good sounds. Click, slide, tisk. I taped a fresh card inside the cupboard. Friday. Checklist. Program. Pick up from back row. Names. Breathe between syllables. Phone. Face down. After. No interviews. Freesia. Then train ticket window for a short sea ride next week. Porch. Closed until afternoon. Mercy. Available Sunday 2 to 4 if the weather approves and the sentence is short. I ironed pillowcases because smooth cotton convinces anxiety to sit up straight. I watered the rosemary at the step and told it I'd be back by dusk tomorrow with stories that were mostly names. The plant answered by smelling like better kitchens than mine. Before bed. Rowan texted a photo of the program with my job circled. Reader of names. That title made my lungs behave. Priscilla sent a single line. I'll sit in the back and clap on time. I believed her because she didn't add an emoji. Keen emailed what lawyers use for contrition, a sentence that admits sequence. I regret that my interpretations outran the decedent's instructions. I filed it under weather, good, star small. Somewhere around 10. The porch bell made a shy noise. I checked the peephole. Darren, alone, holding a thermos like an apology, chain on, water poured. I won't stay, he said. I wanted to say, I'm not filming tomorrow. I'm bringing a jacket and sitting in the back. I'll carry chairs if they need it. Good, I answered. Chairs first, then vowels, then talking. He smiled in the small, relieved way men smile when they realize usefulness has a door they can open without speech. He handed me the thermos, broth, labeled, time-stamped, drink after names, and left before the timer had anything to honk about. The night found its gentle shoes. I read Richard's blue-edged letter only to the comma that matters. Forgive in autumn. Then I put it under the tab where my hand already knows to reach. The banker's lamp clicked off like a period placed with intention. The latch practiced its syllable and the chain settled in its groove. The thermostat announced night set, like a junior attorney proud of his specialty. I lay down, and the house held me with the steadiness of a sentence that knows where it ends. In the dark. I said the first scholar's name once like a promise. I said the last one like a thank you. Then I pictured the stage. The small boat of a program in my hands. The quiet room breathing in time with syllables that belong to someone who has done hard things to get here. I pictured walking off without adding myself to their moment. That is a power I trust. It doesn't point at itself. It points at the person in front of it and says clearly, you belong. The auditorium wore its best version of ordinary. Folding chairs aligned like quiet intentions. A lectern that didn't need praise. Stage lights adjusted to a temperature that flatters paper as much as faces. Rowan and Mara sat in the back row with me until it was time. the program in my hand a small, seaworthy boat. I touched the rosemary ribbon in my pocket, breathed like a person who trusts clocks, and waited while the dean did the preamble that buildings require. When my name was called, reader of names, I stood, not to be seen, but to point at the people who should be. Elder wisdom, when a moment arrives, let it be about the work, not the worker. You will feel steadier if your sentence contains more nouns than adjectives. I read slowly. Syllables are rocks across a creek. You place them so the next foot doesn't get wet. Amaya, pause for bloom. Nguyen, front of the mouth, not the back. Jorge, soft J, not the hamburger J. The room breathed with me, a tide perfectly unremarkable in the way only a tide can be, somewhere in the back. A seat creaked like a friendly hinge. I imagined Darren sitting on his hands to avoid clapping at the wrong moments. I let the names do their unshowy ceremony, and when the list finished, I folded the program like a letter to be answered by spring. Light joke 1. The microphone had a foam windscreen that looked exactly like a tiny beret. I thanked it for dressing the part, and it responded by not popping a single P. Academic phrase of the day: spotlight effect. The public argument that we overestimate how much other people notice us. Most are busy noticing themselves. The cure is purpose. Say the names, plant the bulbs, let the light fall where it's needed, not where your nerves think it should. After. A hallway of congratulations formed itself without needing a memo. Maritza grinned tall as a lamppost and said, "Receipt is easy now," like she'd finally taught the word to heal. Joel introduced me to his sister and whispered, "She's a banister. I'm a boundary," which felt like the healthiest family brand I'd ever heard. Darren appeared at the edge of the group, jacket respectable, eyes steady. "Carried chairs," he murmured. Sat back row, breathed. "Good verbs," I answered. He handed me a thermos labeled broth, after names, time-stamped, like a technician of care. Outside, winter had decided to be polite. Rowan walked me to the car with the finesse of a man who underlines verbs even in weather. "You were correct to go slow," he said. "You made the room a metronome." "Thank the names," I replied. "They're heavy in the right way." He smiled, tipped his head toward the future. "Monday, I'll drop the last signatures. Then I'm out of your kitchen until you need me. Boredom can take it from here." Quirky fact. Sidebar. Most stage microphones are cardioid, heart-shaped pickup patterns that listen hard to what's in front and ignore the sides. The trick is staying inside the heart. You don't have to be clever, you have to be close. I took the long way home, letting the town's familiar storefronts practice being witnesses. The florist had kept her promise, 3 freesias in paper. On the house, if you sit while smelling them. I sat on the shop's little bench and did as told. Evening is when the flower publishes its best work, at home. The latch said its accurate syllable. The chain slid into its groove. And the banker's lamp put its green circle where the work happens. Light joke 2. The smart fridge flashed celebration confetti again. I told it the party dress code was down light and broth. And it settled for showing me a perfect 37 d'Arav like a valedictorian who learned humility. Mail waited under the brass birds, one postcard from a scholar who'd already started on their book list. One envelope with Darren's printed invoice for ladder straps, quiet, dated, true, and a folded clipping from Priscilla, her retraction, underlined once, with a pen that had finally met restraint. I filed them where my hands already go. The rosemary by the steps exhaled a ribbon of sun into the doorway. I let it tie me to the room. We ate celebration beans, which taste suspiciously like regular beans plus relief. Lenore sprinkled salt the way experienced friends do, exactly enough. No speeches. "You read like planting bulbs," she said, a line taken from my own card, returned with interest. Darren stopped by the porch with a single sentence and no camera. "Good job today." "Thank you," I said. "You can oil the gate if your hands need something to do." He oiled. The latch answered with its small, decent click. Messages tried to run their old routes. Lyra's firm offering a gentle dialogue with editorial oversight. Her mother inquiring whether a statement of mutual respect might be crafted to lower the temperature. I sent the weather, orders attached, porch rules attached, calendar attached. Light joke 3, my timer, the goose, honked at exactly 10 minutes during a porch attempt. The visitor startled. I apologized to the concept of etiquette and wrote the porch minutes like a nurse lays out instruments. Night came on time. I practiced being a person who leaves and returns well. Tomorrow. A train out to the sea and back. Soup labeled for later. Plants watered. Thermostat set to hold steady. I wrote a card for the cupboard. After ceremony, train ticket. Freesia by the sink. Do not schedule emotions. Let them happen in transit. Buy a second brass bird. Send the ladder strap payment and keep the receipt with the others under a paperclip shaped like an anchor. Because Richard loved jokes that steady. Before bed, I walked the fence. Rails lined up like a sentence that finally chose its commas. The gate clicked the syllable it knows. The rosemary remembered the sun for me, back inside. The banker's lamp did its gentle tisk. The chain settled. The thermostat announced night set with its quiet courtroom pride. I laid the program in the simple binder under events and touched the first name once, the last name twice. Not mine, theirs. That's the point. Elder wisdom. Second serving. A life rebuilt is not a spectacle, it's a schedule. Locks, then water, then work, then beauty, mercy, when it won't enable. Soup, when speech is too ambitious. And names. Read properly, whenever the world forgets who it's for. The noise has thinned to something bearable, and the rooms take their softer shapes, green light falling only where work asks for it, a latch rehearsing the single syllable it knows. Beans remembering patience on a back burner while a small ribbon of rosemary air drifts in through the open door. A judge's pen has found its quiet music. Orders hold like rails along a sentence. And the porch keeps its new civility with chairs that understand 10 minutes is an act of care. The house. No longer auditioning for disaster. Learns a better key, click, slide, tisk. And in that modest choir, a person can find the square inch of bravery needed to sleep. Names were read the way bulbs are planted, slowly, with the faith that something will rise when it's time, and a son practiced verbs with harnesses and oil instead of speeches. Apologies arrived shorter than harm and exactly the right size for beginnings. People who mistook gossip for concern have sat themselves in the back row and learned to clap on time. The rules are written where hands already go. The binder closes without strain. Tomorrow offers a train to the sea and back the same day. A trip so modest it becomes a promise a heart can keep. And in the literacy room, grown hands shape vowels into steps that hold. So the night lowers itself, steady and untheatrical, and the future becomes a calendar that doesn't raise its voice. Locks first, water next, work that behaves, beauty afterward, enough. Finally, for peace to find a chair.